See that? Jesus.
There we go. All right. Hey, good evening, everybody. It is 6 p.m.
It
Same
is.
place, same time. PowHer Hour. We are here tonight with my business partners, Miss Lisa Griggs and Miss Renee Rand from Las Vegas. Welcome, welcome. And we are joined by Mr. Robert Ferguson. Thank you for joining us as well. We have amazing things happening on PowHer Hour. And Miss Renee Rand, if you could just enlighten us about, our little QR code and what's happening with giveaways.
Well, we have a lot of exciting things going on, but we want you to come join us and join our PowHer Hour group. And for those that you refer people to, we're putting together some prizes and goodies that we can share with everyone out there, and some self care and some libido packages we're giving away. And we've had a lot of fun with that, so we're really looking forward to being able to do a lot more of that. And if you have any questions, feel free to come on here and put into the chat today. We're going to be happy to answer those questions for you and help you with anything you need as far as referring you to better health and your vitality. And so what we focus on expands. So Robert's going to fill us in today. Veronica, you going to introduce Robert?
I will, as soon as I let Lisa speak and tell her about our sponsor.
So thank you, Renee. So today our sponsor of our show is Zinzino. We're so excited to have Zinzino sponsoring this show. Get tested so you don't have to guess. Test-based nutrition. Such a powerful way to really own what you're doing with your nutrition and your life and advocate for yourself. Because if you don't do it, nobody else is going to do it for you. Unless, of course, you have a Mr. Robert Ferguson in your life, our favorite nutritionist. Then you have somebody advocating for you in the world today. The other thing we want you to do is we have an 800 number, and we are here to answer your questions, okay? That's why we partnered up with Robert. So if you have questions and you can't put them in the chat, you can always call the 800 number. It's 877-776-3985. Oh, I did it by memory.
That's awesome.
So excited.
Tonight's topic is about epilepsy
Yes.
and menopause. You know what? Menopause, it's the transition period when a woman's menstrual cycle ends and can significantly impact women with epilepsy. So there's many effects of menopause on epilepsy, and it can increase seizure frequency, changes in seizure patterns, and even new onset of epilepsy, which is really, really amazing information to know. But Lisa, if you can introduce our guest speaker and he can speak about our epilepsy and menopause.
I get to introduce Robert. It's so awesome. So, Mr. Robert Ferguson, we just love having you on here. We've kind of coined you as our favorite nutritionist, and obviously the clinical nutritionist for PowHer Hour. That has been such a blessing for all of the women here. We're a community of over 700 women now strong, and our numbers are trending up, and such vital information that women need to get, into their hands. And we're so grateful that you're here. So you're a clinical nutritionist. Robert Ferguson's a clinical nutritionist for over 30 years. He's coming up on his 31st year. And but still a young man. He's a Marine. He served our country, has a master's in psychology. He's NAACP nominated. He's written many books, a lot of them bestsellers. He has the only clinical trial on obesity here in the United States. He's on the presidential task force for obesity in our nation. He's worked with a lot of Fortune 20 companies, Aetna, United Health. He's also worked with the MOVE campaign that was under Michelle Obama's guidance. Move America, I believe it was called, something like that, right, Robert? And sorry, I know it was big. I know everything you've done is big, and you just had so many accomplishments, and we're so grateful every time you come on here and spend some time with us.
But I also think he's on the advisory board for Zinzino.
Yes. Basically your bio is as long as the Dead Sea Scrolls. That's what we need to know.
Without further ado, Mr. Robert.
Yes, thank you, Robert.
Well, it's good to be here, and I wish I was on video today. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen. We've had some technical difficulties, but I believe my photo pops up, right?
Yes.
Okay. And if everybody can hear me, then they can see you guys. That makes everybody happy. So we have a win-win. I want to salute you, Lisa, for putting on your amazing event this past weekend, and everybody who helped make that happen, which includes this crew. And of course, Veronica, you were right there hosting and making it all happen. So what an amazing team. And we have some amazing people on it as we talked about epilepsy. And I figured that maybe now, if you guys are open to it, that we kind of share with people who are able to catch our time now some of the things that we went over this past weekend.
Mhm.
And if we have time after that, I can share with you some updated ways to tap into seeing if a person is in an inflammatory state or an
Mhm.
anti-inflammatory state. So when I say inflammatory state, like pro-inflammatory, everybody listening would want to know if their body is in a pro-inflammatory state, which is not a good thing. And everybody would want to know if they're in an anti-inflammatory state, which is where everybody wants to be. And this all ties into epilepsy. Because if you are someone who is living with epilepsy, or anyone who maybe you haven't been diagnosed with epilepsy, but you experience seizures, when you're in a pro-inflammatory state, two things are going to happen or take place. One, when you have a seizure, if you have one, it's going to be more intense. And two, if you want to reduce the frequency of seizures, you want to be in an anti-inflammatory state. Any questions on that? Does everybody follow that part right there? Because that is very important. And if we get to it, when I wrote this article, which I haven't published yet, I believe that this is the one that is going to give all of us the ammunition to speak to everybody that we know and ask them this basic question. If you could find out right now if you were in a pro-inflammatory state, meaning you have some serious inflammation going on, or find out if you're in an anti-inflammatory state, would you want to know? And the question may be, well, I think I am. Yeah, I'm probably in a pro-inflammatory state. Or what does that mean? Right? So when you are pro-inflammatory, you are setting the stage for nothing but negatives to happen to your health and your body. Okay? Nobody wants to be in that. We all want to be anti-inflammatory. That's the state you want your body in, which means reduce risk from everything from dry eye to blood clot, stroke, to having a seizure. And our test, here's the drum roll, the test that everybody can get. You can find out like right now where you are and to what degree. So in preface, and we can come back to this after we go over some of the things we've shared about epilepsy. I went and got John's test, our dear friend John, and I looked at his original tests. I also looked at the young man that Renee introduced me to. I looked at his original tests to share with you guys these two inflammatory markers that our test reveals. And then I went and looked at 3 of my clients over the last 2 years that are no longer alive, but had health conditions. And I pulled up their tests, and it just blew me away. And I can tell you right now that this one lady, Jacqueline, who I always show her tests, she's 27-1. Remember, it's always red in every presentation I show her. And what her test revealed to me today, which I didn't go into it that deep when she had started, because she did the test, she took balance oil for 2 months, and she quit because she had a busy summer. So that was like in May of last year. Then she dies the December 5th of last year. She has a blood clot. She goes to bed, has a blood clot, and dies. And there was no signs aside from the data that I had. And when I went back and looked at her inflammation levels, she was 100% pro-inflammatory. and she was in the condition where it was like increased risk of multiple chronic diseases. Right in our tests. So anyway, we'll get to that. And it's actually exciting because everybody can find out. You can find out right now, and then you can do something about it. And why not live your life in an anti-inflammatory state? And if everybody works on getting to an anti-inflammatory state because we have a test, then everybody wins. Who wants to walk around and be in an inflammatory state? I mean, I don't, right? So that being said, I'm gonna send a request so I can share my screen. And as I get ready to do that, any questions, anything come to mind you guys want me to speak on based on what I just shared? I can't hear you.
I think, well, there's no questions yet in the chat, but I did want to just say, Robert, that one of the gals that's in our epilepsy Faces of Epilepsy group, she's actually been talking about that her seizures, they are more intense around certain times of the month when she gets her menstrual cycle. In fact, she always has seizures when she's experiencing these cycles. So I'm glad that we're having the discussion today. So thank you so much for taking all this time to get all this new knowledge in front of our audience's hands.
All right. Well, let me see. I'm going to share my screen. Let me be the one. All right. So for those of you who were not here to experience this past weekend and what we're doing for this month, which is National Epilepsy Awareness Month, right? Lisa has formed an organization and everyone as part of her team called Faces of Epilepsy. And as you can see on the screen, there's many people who live with epilepsy in the past as well as today. And who knew that, one of the most famous voices and musicians in the 20th century, Prince, was living with epilepsy. And people like Danny Glover, Lil Wayne, one of the most iconic rappers of all time, to like Elton John, I mean, one of the biggest voices living today. And the sad part, and Lisa, I think we kind of had a text exchange about this, is that these people don't really talk about it, or at least we don't hear about it. And it's usually a surprise when people find out about it. And it's almost like it's like taboo to even talk about it. And so you just don't hear about it, but yet you may be at the coffee store right now listening to us have this conversation, and the person next to you has seizures on a regular basis. So it's extremely common. It's just one of those things that people, they just don't talk about. And I think it would be very helpful to get more people who do talk about it and are wanting to be a voice and get it out there. So I commend this entire effort, and I look forward to see what's to come. And before we came live, I had shared with Lisa an email that I received today, a woman who said that her son has not been diagnosed with epilepsy. However, he has routine seizures. And their only recommendation from the doctors that they were, spending time with was to leave where they live and get away from being around pesticides in agriculture. So that's their recommendation, where we all know that, we can look at inflammation. So again, the doctors are not aware of this. And what an amazing opportunity for us and for anyone who hears us. You are being informed about something that many people do know about it, but not compared to the world, over 7 billion people. And in the United States, over 330 million, less than 1% they don't even have an idea. So anyway, what we're talking about is something that impacts everyone, and not just epilepsy, but this whole thing that we're referring to as a pro-inflammatory state. So anyone who is living with epilepsy, experience seizures, we're speaking to you. And anyone who's living with any chronic illness, we're speaking to you too. Now, if you want to learn more about Faces of Epilepsy, I would just tell everybody, go to the website, facesofepilepsy.com. Information is there. And as this weekend we talked about this, I just went and just, basic information. If someone's living with epilepsy, they already know. But we just share like the basic definition of what it is. It's funny, my mom reminded me that when I was a little kid, and I saw where I get my sarcasm from, because she one of her sisters, she had twin sisters, one died at birth and one lived. And the one that lived used to have seizures all the time. Her name was Sheila. And when I was a little kid, for the first 6-7 years of my life, my mom took care of her, and she would have seizures like all the time. And so I totally forgot about this, you guys. And that was my aunt, and who I loved, and eventually we lost her. But my mom, being sarcastic, goes, "You remember your Aunt Sheila, don't you?" I go, "Okay, are you trying to be funny?" Right? So I was telling her about what we talked about this weekend, and the whole thing about Faces of Epilepsy. And so then I just been thinking about it like nonstop. And I remember it, man, like it was yesterday. And I think she died, I must have been around 6 or 7 years old. But epilepsy, for those of you who don't know, is a brain disorder that causes people to have repeated seizures. And these seizures can happen when there is a sudden surge of electrical activity in the brain. We are electricity, just to remind people. We are electricity. And there is a direct correlation to the gut, which I didn't go into much detail about over the weekend. But just think of epilepsy as something that is we don't even have the answers to a lot of it. But it just means that the brain's electrical circuit, if you will, is unstable and can misfire. Okay? It just happens. So it's not like someone's bad. It's not, it just is what it is. And we don't have all the answers, right? So then I said, well, what causes it? And we went over this, and this would be fun if you guys wanted to like join in and talk a little bit about it, because I called a couple of my friends who played pro football, and they were sharing with me a lot of the guys that they used to play pro football with today have epilepsy. And they believe it's because of the constant contact, concussions, etc., that put them in a position where they have these ongoing seizures. And so when we look at some of it, they would say some of it is because of genetics, right? They could say it runs into the family. And again, a lot of this is just up in the air. And then you have brain conditions, right? So I know people who have had a stroke. Maybe they got an infection or a brain tumor. And then after getting the stroke, they started having seizures. So then that person would have epilepsy, right? So it could be because of that. And then you have brain injury or trauma, right? Which, my sister, when she got hit by a train, and she had zero brain waves, basically. She was a vegetable. However, even in a vegetative state, my sister would have seizures. And again, when we had this conversation, I don't know, I buried it in my head, but my sister lived in a coma for 5 years. So whenever there's any type of brain injury or trauma, you can find yourself experiencing seizures as a result, which all stem from that moment. So people who play rugby, gymnastics, football, again, wrestling, MMA, boxers, very well known, right? And I've worked with boxers for years. I was like, man, this is crazy. Like, it's just connected everywhere. And then, problems before or during birth, right? So if you get a lack of oxygen and neural development when you're pregnant and you have a baby, this goes back to some of the conversation when they were talking about Tylenol, acetaminophen, what takes place there that creates this inflammation. It keeps going back to the whole thing about inflammation, right? It's like we want to be in an anti-inflammatory state. Everybody, when you're pregnant, when you're walking around, as you live life. And then you have the metabolic and the chemical imbalances. You know, a lot of this could go back to drug use, right? You could have someone who experiences really low blood sugar. So oftentimes someone who's a type 2 diabetic, or someone who's a type 1 diabetic, part of what will happen with them because of the low blood sugar will experience seizures. And as a result of that, they get diagnosed with epilepsy. And, you know, the last one is chronic inflammation and cell membrane dysfunction, which goes back to cellular health, which is what we're talking about. Like, this is so important for everybody. It is like I'm almost speechless that this is not the number one thing people are talking about. As far as like cell membrane fluidity and the importance of healthy cells, because we're talking about cells in your liver, your bones, your muscles, your brain, like trillions and trillions of cells. We're only as healthy as our cells. And then this is only 50% of the causes of epilepsy, right? There's a term used called idiopathic epilepsy. Basically means that we don't know why they have it, but they have it. And so, but that's just that's the world that we live in. You know, they don't know a whole bunch in the brain. I don't think we're ever going to really know, because it's just, I mean, look at what's going on. I mean, you're talking, you know, 80 plus billion neurons, which is a mix of electricity and chemicals, neurotransmitters. I mean, it's so complex. I mean, we don't know. So, but the common thread here is, how can we reduce inflammation? How can we make sure you're in a pro or in an anti-inflammatory state? And so I'm going to pause and see where you guys have questions. Stop sharing, and then, you know, I can shift and I can share some additional things that even tie into menopause. That even ties into menopause for the menopausal women here today. You got to unmute, ladies. You got to unmute. Okay, come on. I can't hear you.
Go ahead,
All right, we hear you
Robert,
now.
we don't have any questions yet in the chat. But I know that there are epileptics on today with us. So, and I see also Dr. Lisa's on here today. I'm excited to see Dr. Lisa on here. It's always good to see her. So I think we can just continue down this path, but if anybody has any questions, please put them in the chat or raise your hand, because I'm sure Robert wants to be able to answer those. We're talking about epilepsy today and menopause. And Robert, this presentation so far has been amazing. So I
well,
guess
buckle
we'll just
up,
keep going.
buckle up. I hope you're ready. You got your seatbelt on.
We ready. Welcome,
Okay.
Miguel.
All right, so I'm going to shift from epilepsy, but remember, everything that we're talking about ties into epilepsy, because the goal, as a reminder, is to reduce the intensity of epileptic seizures, and also the goal is to reduce the frequency. And that would be the same for gout, lupus, all of these other autoimmune conditions. Okay, so I just want to keep everybody, I want you to have the same mindset, frame of mind, as I shift and use different words, but it's still talking about epilepsy, right? And so I'm going to bring up a slide, and this is about, you should see inflammation. Okay, now I'm so excited about what I'm about to share with you guys that I'm having a hard time being still. Like, seriously, like, I'm pumped, because as an omega balancing coach, and we're constantly developing our curriculum for people who want to offer this as a service, this is a game changer, because inflammation is real, but very rarely do you get clarity on what that really means. Okay. Now, when you look at all of these categories of conditions, epilepsy is part of it, cancer is part of it, skin conditions part of it, IBS, obesity, fibromyalgia, Parkinson's, macular degeneration, heart disease, arthritis. Inflammation is a driver of all of these conditions. But I'm going to pause here and feel free to jump in, because we know it is. If you had 100,000 wellness related experts in a room or an auditorium, everybody would agree to this. Not one person would disagree that when the body is in an inflammatory state, it's not good. So if everybody agrees with that, why aren't we addressing inflammation? That's the cray-cray around all of this. It's because it's just not being talked about. And here's why it's not being talked about. Is because people don't know what I'm about to show you. If they knew it, and I know this to be true because I have over 20 physicians are my private nutrition clients, and all of them are on board with everything I'm saying. I have some amazing cardiologists that are my personal clients. I'm their nutritionist. Family practitioners, I'm their nutritionist, right? And that goes the same with nurses, personal trainers, health coaches, and everyday people. And when I share this, they all get it, and they're thankful. So let me show you where it starts to get exciting. And this is where I'm looking forward to Alyssa's test, because it's going to set the foundation for something amazing. 6 months from now, you guys, when it comes to faces of epilepsy, we're going to be having some completely different conversations. I'm talking Good Morning America, Today Show. They're all just get ready, because the game is about to change. Okay. Now, here's what the test looks like. It's like a little test, comes in a little box. And this test goes to this organization or this laboratory in Norway called Vitas. They're third-party independent. Now, the brand that we're connected with is called Zenzino, but they're their own company. They just happen to have a product called Balance Oil. They do not do the tests. That is completely separate, has nothing to do with each other. Okay, if the product sucks, then it's going to show up in the blood work. So they just happen to have a good product. And then they create the relationship with this big laboratory so that it's easy for us to get this test, which is a fatty acid profile test. It's called a whole blood dry blood spot test. Okay. Now here's my one client that I had who's no longer with us. And you can see she's 27-1, which gives us a clue that she's out of balance. Okay. And we want that 27 to be 3 or lower. And the good news is that everybody can get that number to 3 or lower. Everybody. Even if you didn't change the way you ate. This is where it gets even more like intriguing. Okay. Now, I'm not going to go into the test. But what stimulated me to write this article, or to finish an article that I started 10 months ago or so. In the article, and I'll make it available to you guys as soon as we're done, I'm going to post it. You can go to my website. It'll be there. And the article is titled something like How to Know If You're Pro-Inflammatory State or if you're in an anti-inflammatory state. And remember, the consensus is everybody wants to be in an anti-inflammatory state. So my client says, hey, I'm going to take borage oil. And then, Primrose comes to mind, because for years, when I first became a nutritionist in 95, like 97, 98, 99, I remember recommending borage oil. And I remember recommending evening primrose oil. And evening primrose oil, I recommend it because it was one of those things that a lot of herbalists would recommend for people who had menopausal symptoms, Renee. We're back to menopause. You see what I'm saying? And then borage oil was one that I recommended because I knew that it would help with inflammation, and I wasn't confident at the time in recommending a fish oil. So borage oil was something that I'm actually really familiar with. Well, if you look to the left on the screen, one, you can see the words gamma linolenic acid. Gamma linolenic acid is in the omega-6 family, which is a fatty acid, but it's anti-inflammatory. It actually reduces inflammation, is known for that. However, if a person is in a inflammatory state, meaning they have a lot of omega-6 coming in, seed oils that they eat, it cancels out the gamma linolenic acid. You follow me? Now, not to get too technical, if you look in the middle, Alyssa, okay, you will see linoleic acid. Linoleic acid is what they call seed oils, the things that cause inflammation in the body. Safflower oil, sunflower oil, soybean oil. If you eat mayonnaise, I would be willing to bet you that 98% of everyone's mayonnaise, the first or second ingredient will be soybean oil, which causes inflammation. Corn oil causes inflammation. Grapeseed oil that your mom or people use to stir fry those vegetables causes inflammation. So everything that causes inflammation is a triggering opportunity for a seizure. Everybody following me? Yes. So you don't want anything that causes inflammation. You want everything that is anti-inflammation. So my client who's like, should I take this borage oil? And she's very inflamed. I'm like, I don't think that's a good idea, right? Because you're literally adding fuel to the fire you already have. Now, every doctor that I would say consults with someone who has epilepsy, I would encourage them to get informed or send them to people like me and us, because nutrition is king and food is medicine when done properly. Okay, so I think we can see. So this was a trigger to say, you know, I need to just finish this article. And my phone died. I had a couple other challenges. I was like, you know what? Let me just dive in and let's get it done. So I got it done. Now, I'm going to show you two quick slides. This one, number one, so there's two. It says arachidonic acid to eicosapentaenoic acid, so AA to EPA ratio. That is your global inflammation gauge. When you get your test, Alyssa, and everyone who gets their test, in your test, it's going to give you a whole bunch of great information. It's 20 pages. But in there, it's going to tell you what your arachidonic acid is, and it's going to tell you what your percentage of EPA is. Once you have those two valuable numbers, you just do a basic division. AA divided by EPA. And as you can see, if it's 3.0 or lower, you're anti-inflammatory. Nothing else to talk about. Everybody who has this test, you can do that. Basic, you got a calculator. You can even ask Siri and you will know. That means you have cellular balance. But 99% of everybody is not going to know this or have this. They're going to be on their way to getting in balance. They're going to be chronic inflammation is forming. Wouldn't that be nice to know? And then you're going to have those who are over 9 linked to disease risks and metabolic dysfunction, which is what my client had, who was 27-1, who died 6 months later from a blood clot turned into a massive heart attack and died. She was 43% right here. Look, 9, 5 months later, she's no longer with us. You can't make this stuff up. So when I was looking at one of our dear friends, that person was at 13. Anything 9 or higher, that's not good. We need to get that down. Then the young man that I was looking at, he was in this risk factor. So that Renee connected me with. So imagine if he hadn't have met Renee and didn't get on the balance oil and was not improving this inflammatory marker that is utilized at Harvard. Okay, I want everybody to know the top research scientists, the ones who are doing a lot of these studies and really tracking inflammation at Harvard, they look at this on a regular basis. In Norway, Europe, and Japan, at all of their high-level institutions, they look at the AA to EPA ratio. In the United States, our doctors are a little behind, don't know about it yet. It hasn't been introduced. And I have reasons why I believe that's the case. So everybody who gets their tests, you got the basics, but then you got this. So this is why I can't wait, right? So when we get your numbers, you're going to know. And then when you take the balance oil and we retest, if you were 20 to, over 20, after 4 months, it ain't going to be over 20. The inflammation markers are going to go down, which means we're going to get you to a place where you are anti-inflammatory. And who knows what that is going to mean. I look forward to it. Right? So one of our friends is at 13. They've been on the oil a little bit, so we're a little high. Okay, but I have good news. Now here's number 2. DGLA, which is in everybody's tests. So you divide the DGLA by arachidonic acid. And this is on the omega-6 pathway. This is where all the craziness is taking place with inflammation. This is the one that I'm excited for people to really look at, because this one is going to tell us where you are from an inflammation standpoint, right? Are you pro-inflammatory? Because this omega-6 is the inflammation side. And you want to get that to be 0.15 or higher. That means you are anti-inflammatory. And if you're early inflammation, which the gentleman that I talked to, Renee, he's early. And what I've noticed is that people who are early tend to be younger, right? Like without even looking at the person or knowing their age, when the other AA to EPA, what I just went over, is really elevated, the age part will tell me if they're like borderline. Like I would expect Alyssa to be borderline because of her age. And as they mature, you start to see that go up. Now, here's the good news that I saw. So remember our dear friend, John? So John's hemoglobin went up. His doctors are like, wow, this is amazing. Because his hemoglobin was suffering. It was low. And now it's normal. When I did John's DGLA to AA, he's 13 or 0.13. So when it's the DGLA to AA, you want it to go up. When it's the one before this, you want it to go down. So look over here, it says 0.15 is excellent. 0.10 to 0.14 is borderline. John was down here. Now he's 0.13, which coincides with his hemoglobin going up. It's amazing. It's like, so basically, this is all about early inflammation and seeing where it's at, where you're headed. The other one is all about decreasing the risk of outcomes that we don't want. And all of this is inside of your balance test. So it goes back to this slide right here, okay? Let's summarize, then we can talk about it. If everyone, 99% of the population, has some cell damage, and that's an easy, conservative estimate, in time, they will have some type of exposure, some type of expression. If we went and just said, okay, if I have epilepsy, And I know part of being epileptic is that I'll have a seizure. And I really don't want a seizure. Well, if I don't improve my cellular function, then I'm going to continue to have those seizures because that's part of the expression. So if I want it in theory, right, in concept, to reduce the intensity of the seizure, to reduce the frequency of the seizure, not one doctor in the world is going to disagree with what I'm saying right now. That you want to calm the inflammation. No one's going to disagree with that. They just don't know how to do that. The only thing they would know is taking certain meds that as part of their training is their indoctrination is what they advise. And it is what it is, right? You still want to reduce or calm the inflammation. And so we have two very important markers that can help everyone calm the inflammation. So we don't have to deal with a lot of these things. And when you look at it, even in this study that they did 9 years ago, this was done by a bunch of physicians all around the world. It's called the Global Nutrition and Health Alliance. And they were looking at like what is the likelihood of what percentage of the population is not getting enough omega-3s. Now, this is 9 years ago, and we're worse today. So all you got to do is, I mean, when I do the test, if you look at the bottom, it says 4%, less than 4%. America is still less than 4%. Canada and Mexico, we're just a mess. Then you look at Brazil. Guess who eats a lot of soybeans? Yeah, Brazil, boy, they tear up some soybeans and everything. And then if you look at populations who have the highest levels of type 2 diabetes, which is inflammation, India, look at them in the red. So nothing's gotten better. Everything has gotten worse. Everything. And when you go to like Australia, I don't think that they're going to be in the orange anymore. They're going to be in the red. And you will have different parts. So, and if you notice, like the ones who like are known for eating fish and are close to the water, they're in the green. Nigeria is in the green, right? Look at Africa. I mean, just think about that for a second. And if you go and look up omega-6 to 3 ratio for people in Nigeria, I think on average, the average person without even trying is 4 to 1. They eat fish like all the time, like nonstop. Fish market is like huge. So they're getting a ton of omega-3s. Everyone else is just where they are. And of course, a lot of these places haven't been tested. But the ones that have been tested, we can see what's working for them. So I'm going to jump out of this and let's open it up for any questions.
Robert, we do have one question in the chat. Miguel was asking, he was questioning black seed oil. Is that a good one?
Black seed oil is a very popular supplement that a lot of people are using. And black seed oil I have nothing negative. I actually wrote an article on black seed oil. I have nothing negative to say about black seed oil. However, black seed oil works better when you have cell membrane fluidity. So if I was going to do black seed oil, I would be taking balance oil and then black seed oil. Black seed oil does not help balance oil, but balance oil does help black seed oil. Come on, better ask somebody.
Okay. I see Alyssa is on, she's director of Faces of Epilepsy. She's epileptic and she was at her neurologist today. It just so happens, Robert. And Alyssa, can you unmute? Is there any way you could come on for a minute? I know you're getting your purple nails done for Epilepsy Awareness Month. But
Yeah,
maybe you
I
could
have
unmute real quick.
no this hand.
Tell,
Sorry, my
I
sister's
do
yelling at
too.
me. Just bumped
Tell,
it, bro.
Can you
Should've
tell
pretended
Robert
I-
about your experience today with the neurologist? I know Dr. Lisa's in the background as well. I just wanted you to maybe share, if you're willing to and open enough to share with Robert how your experience was with your
Yeah.
neurologist today, and maybe he could shed some light.
Yeah, absolutely. So, hi guys. My name is Alyssa. Um, so I went to the neurologist, a new one, never been to him before, and I asked him if he knew what the acid test was, and he was like, huh? Like he had no idea what I was talking about. And then he told me that he also didn't know what PVNH was, which is the type of epilepsy that I have, and told me that I probably wasn't going to be a candidate for surgery. And basically was saying that medication is really the only way to go. And I was like, I don't really, in my head, I'm like, I don't really believe that because of what you told me, Lisa, um, with Haley and how she was eating fish and all of that stuff. And I have a lot of hope for myself and this balance oil. And yeah, that's basically like what kind of happened. But being epileptic and actually like seeing a glimmer of hope with the seizures and this oil, I'm very excited to get on this oil and have this test.
Well, next time, what I would love you to ask, I would have 3 questions. I would say, hey, doc, can you tell me what is the role of inflammation in my body as it pertains to epileptic seizures?
Say that again. What is the role?
Yeah, like what role does inflammation play in the frequency of my seizures?
Oh, everything. 100%.
Okay, so he shared that with you?
No, but I knew that because PVNH and also my old neurologist was telling me that inflammation is what causes it because I have PVNH is basically little nodules, for those of you who don't know, that are inside of the gray matter in your head, and they didn't migrate properly. So whenever something happens, like whenever I get too inflamed from doing something, like for instance, I was a cheerleader. So when you were saying inflammation causes it and head injuries cause it, it started to make more sense because I didn't have this when I was younger. All of a sudden, it just kind of came on when I was 21. And I was like, But when I was younger, when I was a cheerleader, I got concussions a lot because I was a flyer and I would be dropped and, all of that stuff. So when you were mentioning all that, I was like, oh wait, this is starting to make a lot of sense. Then when I go to college, I used to drink, because you're in college, of course, and that's when the seizures really, really started. So I was just getting inflamed, inflamed, inflamed on top of the stress, on top of everything else that was happening. So inflammation is probably the number one factor in what is happening here. Also,
Okay, so
sorry, you can go.
no, go for it.
I was gonna mention, Lisa, you wanted me to talk about my epilepsy and my menstrual cycle. Should I wait or should I do that right now?
I don't know if you have anything else, Robert, that
Well,
you.
Well, here's my follow-up question, and then we can go there. Because if you ask that question to your doctor, then I would say, okay, so if inflammation, sir or ma'am, plays a role in the frequency of my seizures as well as the intensity, what are we doing to address the inflammation?
Yeah, they're just putting us on medication and not actually addressing the problem, like the inflammation. Yeah,
Well,
100%.
it would be good it would be good for you to ask that question because then maybe his answer is, well, and I'm guessing, I don't know if this is true, but the medication you're on somehow brings down inflammation. Like, how does the medication you're taking address inflammation is what I would want to know.
Mhm.
Do you know?
No, I am actually not on any medication because all of the medications didn't seem to work for me, and I didn't want to put my body and my mental through all of that because all the medications that I've been on kind of changed who I was as a person, and I didn't like that. So I also, like I said before, it's ketaminial. So it's usually really during my cycle, and I am starting to notice it that if if I'm super stressed out and um, I guess I'm not eating properly, or, when I end up getting my period, the seizures are, like I get maybe 1 to 5 seizures a week when it's during my menstrual. And that's usually the only time it happens. So I guess when I am like shedding, I guess my body gets inflamed and then my head kind of, you know, goes a little AWOL.
Yeah.
I'm still very curious about that too. But yeah, that's kind of what I've been noticing with everything that's been going on.
I mean, that would make sense in principle to me. And it's interesting because this is a time, if I was with Renee, I would bring up the endocannabinoid system and what takes place there, because it plays a huge role in calming inflammation. Right. So we're talking cannabis, marijuana, right? Little puff puff. Or however it's being introduced. But in those pathways, you can see, and I would be willing to bet that the medications that they recommend to you, and I would love, like, text the names of them to Lisa, or directly to me. I would love to look into it, since we're going to spend a month on this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at those meds you were taking, and I'm going to follow the pathway of exactly how they work in order to get the relief that they believe that they provide. And that's going to be very interesting. I look forward to that. That's going to be a good learning cycle.
Yeah, I can definitely do that.
Okay. All right, where we going now? Lisa, Veronica, what's up?
Unmute me. Well, yeah, no, this is a really big deal. Alyssa, thank you so much for being on. Robert, thank you so much for mentioning that too, about the cannabinoid system. I know Renee is a big supporter of that, has a lot of information around that. My question is this, obviously Alyssa goes to her neurologist, and her neurologist doesn't know anything about a fatty acid profile test, right? So it's not being recommended to epileptics. I don't want to give people necessarily false hope, but it seems like everyone that's epileptic should just be tested.
Yeah.
I mean, what is not going to hurt anything for every epileptic to get their fatty acid profile test for themselves so they know exactly where they're at. Why is this something that doctors don't recommend and aren't doing?
Okay, it goes back to what I've been sharing this entire time. Everybody needs to get this test.
Absolutely.
Like, everybody, right? Catch it beforehand. If my client/friend listened to the test and did what was recommended, I believe she would still be here. If my mom was not tested and using the balance oil, I really believe, I don't know if she would be here. And she laughs at me and gives me a hard time, but I go, you're here because of that balance oil. And I'm going to have you a little bit longer because of it. I really 1000% believe that, and would debate anybody and put up a strong case to why I believe that deep down in my heart. Because blood work doesn't lie.
Right.
So what happens, in answer to your question, is if I talk to you, have a huge gap, right? So you have doctors who are very smart, they have a strong intelligence. Intelligence means literally the ability to learn, right? And we all have a stronger ability than others, some. But most doctors are pretty good. They can figure things out. This is not part of the curriculum. Nutrition is not part of the curriculum. Only 25% of all med schools offer some level of nutrition education. So that means 75% of every doctor got no nutrition. Of the 25%, they got some nutrition. On average, it was 12 to 24 hours. That's it. So 12 hours over a 6-year, 8-year period. 12 hours over 8 years. So that means their knowledge of nutrition is based on the culture. And that's why you'll have some physicians that will recommend keto or may recommend different things. But again, in respecting physicians, all my friends who are physicians are smart. And when I share things with them, they pick it up really quick. And then the ones who really go for it, so out of my 220 physicians that are certified nutritionists with me, they picked it up, they got it. And they're great because I actually learned from them because of the way they think. So when you get a physician who really jumps into nutrition, you got somebody that can really make a difference, right? You got a brain like someone, and then they can connect it to everything else that they know. So that's why I said we got to just reach more physicians that are open-minded and see the value in upgrading that part of who they are. And once you have that, then you got a powerhouse.
That's awesome information. Robert, do Enzino products enhance the youthfulness of cells? Another question in the chat.
Well, because the cell is only as healthy for the most part as a cell membrane, and the fact that a cell lives 120 plus or minus 20 days, then absolutely. Right? Because you got a new start every 120 days. You want that new start to be like in a bath of omegas.
Mhm. Okay, so Dr. Lisa was saying in the chat that she agrees with you around your conversation with nutrition, and you know what they're taught. Also, I wanted to ask you, so the fatty acid profile test, then do doctors not know about the test and aren't recommending it because it falls under nutrition?
Well, I mean, it's a little bit more complex than that, right?
Okay.
Because every physician is going to be, their situation is different. Like
Mhm.
3 of my good friends that are physicians, they had a family practice and they are struggling financially because of how they get paid and how insurance works. I mean, it's
Yeah.
a headache.
Really bad right now, yeah.
So then, one of my really good, very close friends, he's a big wig with one of the top, insurance companies, and he's like the guy. He used to be the director, the medical director for NBC. So he likes having a job, so he don't have to rely on insurance. So it depends on who the physician is and where you catch them in their career. That will kind of like dictate how they address certain things, right? Because if you're the medical director for NBC Universal, you're probably not spending a lot of your extra time looking into AA to EPA ratio. Right? I mean, you got thousands of employees that everybody's referring back to you and that you overlook and you bring it up. So they become more of a management type of person, even though they're a physician. So it's very complex. And as I was sharing with you earlier, when like Susie went in she felt she had a hernia, and to identify that, then they ordered an ultrasound. And as a result of doing the ultrasound for the hernia, they discovered she had fatty liver. Well, I believe that everybody, when they go get a regular checkup, should check and see if they have fatty liver. But that's not how it works. The way it works is there has to be a reasoning to check and see if they have fatty liver. Like if their enzymes are out of whack, then they could write up, let's do an ultrasound check for fatty liver. But if their enzymes are not out of whack, then there's no reason to check it. And that's part of the whole relationship between how insurance works and how you get paid. You know what I mean? So it just, and then when they looked at Susie's enzymes, they were normal. So think about how bad the fatty liver would be by the time the enzymes are out of whack.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's just, it's very, so that's why I don't blame physicians. I really don't. Like I'm because I get the game, and I've been trained by quite a few physicians to better understand it. And the same as I don't blame and put down insurance companies. I've worked with Aetna and Anthem. I know how it works. It's not like they want you to be sick. Depending on the situation, they actually make more money if you're healthy. And most people are like, oh, well, I thought that they want us sick. No, a lot of people want you healthy. It's just, it's how the money flows where the disruption is. Everybody's not out here trying to make everybody sick. It ain't as bad as people think. And I didn't say it was good. I just said it ain't as bad.
Yeah.
I see Renee. I would love to know what Renee's comment on it is on that, because I see Renee's energy just shifted when you said that, when she's like, not everybody's out here trying to make you sick, you know? And maybe I talk about that a little bit too much, because I'm like, are we just like, are they just trying to kill us?
Yeah.
You know? So Renee, like, what do you have
Well, I
on
look
that?
at the pharmaceutical side of things, and well, you know me. I show you my bottle of pills that I
Yep.
used to take every month, and every time a doctor would prescribe another pill or another prescription, it would create an effect that would create another problem that they'd have to prescribe another pill and another something for. So here I end up with a 32-ounce bottle worth of pills I'm taking every single month until I decided stop the insanity. I'm done. I'm not doing that anymore. And it took me almost a year to get all of that stuff out of my system, to be
Yeah.
able to weed off of all of that. So,
And
so
you know what? Like,
that's where my energy changes when I think about the whole Western medicine, compared to homeopathic choices.
but you know what? Like, and that's a good point that you just brought up. So I would go like, so for instance, think of this. Let's say that you're a doctor, Renee, and you never were trained on AA to EPA ratio, balance. You were never trained on any of that. And someone comes in and they have a symptom. You were trained on figure out the symptom, right? You got the physician desk reference. They give them some tools. And the longer you've been a physician, the better you are. Like, I've seen that 2,500 times. So you know what? You have this.
Yeah.
And the way we handle that is not to teach you how to make a meal and how to like go grocery shopping. The money is in giving you a prescription that's based on the symptoms that I'm seeing. And that's how it works. And also, to defend physicians a little bit, and I've seen this a lot in my 30 years. Person comes in with high blood pressure. The person goes to the doctor, and if Dr. Lisa is on, she totally knows I am telling the truth on this one. Because this is what happens. Hey, your blood pressure is a little elevated. The person says, oh man, okay, well, okay, that's a first. So what do I do? And if the physician's like thinking about them a little bit, they go, hey, if you lost a couple pounds, I think you could nip it in the butt right now. Oh, trust me, I'm on it. 4 months later, they come back. Hey, your blood pressure is still elevated. So I'm going to recommend we put you on these couple of meds. No, doc, I got it. I got it, doc. I know what to do. I just had a lot going on the last 4 months. See, so what at that point, when you've done this long enough, you know that everybody's lying. And your mind goes to a place where there is no compliance. They're not going to comply. So the average doctor, imagine you've been a doctor for 20, 25, 35 years. All the people that come in and say they're going to make changes, all the people who promise they're going to do this, and you actually believe a lot of them. But with 30 plus years experience, you're like, I don't believe any of them. I have to do what I know is going to save them because they won't save themselves. So then the physician gets numb, right? They lose hope that you're going to do what you said you're going to do. And it's so much easier. Just, you know what? I'm putting you on a statin. I'm putting you on this. And it can be depressing. I mean, imagine how depressing it is for the person who becomes a doctor that became a doctor because they actually want to help people. And every person lets them down. After a while, you're either going to go from a family physician and you're going to go get a job like my friends because they just couldn't handle it anymore, right? It's too much. And I deal with this every day, all day for 30 years. I have had moments where I come home, I am depressed because I'm counting on my clients to do what they said they're going to do, and they don't. And you're just sad. And I have not given up. And that's why I'm a little crazy. So when you think I'm crazy, Lisa, that's why.
I do. We do think you're crazy. We do think you're crazy. Renee's
We
crazy
love
too.
her, Renee, her
Yeah.
bottle of
Let's see your
pills.
bottle, Renee.
This was my monthly stash of pills
Yeah,
in
wow.
a water bottle that I took a month's worth of my pills when I was getting
crazy.
off and added to it. And
Yep.
seriously, number one, I have a hard time swallowing pills.
Yeah.
So just imagine the fact that I had to take all of these every day and all month long. And, so that in itself, balance oil. Hey, I love that shot. No problem whatsoever.
Yeah.
Except when you have to travel and take those.
Then we have to take the capsules when
I
we
know.
travel. Yeah.
I know Dr. Lisa made a comment. I agree. Some of the treatment issues is due to physicians and some is due to patients. Perfect example is a head cold. Everybody wants a antibiotic.
Right.
Isn't that the truth?
Amen.
This has been such enlightening information.
Yeah.
And Robert, as usual,
Great.
you broke it down, so that we could understand it all. And this has been an amazing
Mhm.
podcast this evening. Thank you again for all the information that you
Yes.
shared with us and everybody who has joined us.
Okay, and before we go, I just want to share one last thing, okay? 'Cause I
Yes,
did
go ahead,
see-
Robert.
And I'm totally like Lisa, like Dr. Lisa totally, I mean, she gets it. I mean,
Yeah,
I knew that.
does.
I knew that the first 2 minutes talking to her. Like she's special. And I also
Yes.
Love her.
Yes, we
and
love
some of that
her.
influence probably came from Veronica because she speaks highly of her.
Yeah.
But the last thing I just wanted to address is that Miguel asked a very important question. And he said, how do these products, I believe, enhance or embrace the mitochondria? So the mitochondria inside of your cells, you have a whole bunch of things in there, right? And one of the things in there is called a mitochondria. That's the powerhouse. It's like the engine that makes everything work. And you'll hear a lot of people talk about mitochondria. Well, mitochondria is influenced by NAD+, which you guys have heard that term. And that's a molecule that's inside of the cell. So the NAD+ takes in nutrients and oxygen from the food that we eat. And if the membrane is fluid, going back to the membrane, then NAD gets what it needs. NAD then converses with the mitochondria, and then the mitochondria creates this thing called ATP, adenosine triphosphate. And ATP is what makes it where we can think, we can move, I got to get up and go, all of that. So it's a pathway. And if the membrane is not healthy, then the mitochondria can't do what it really needs to do. So NAD plus, mitochondria, ATP. That basically like summarizes everything. That's an elementary way of looking at it. But if the membrane is not fluid, which is what this balance oil does, then all these people, they're lying about how their products help the mitochondria. That's a lie. And if we put everything on trial, everything would be exposed. Right? So someone says they have a supplement that helps the mitochondria. Well, you can't help the mitochondria if you don't have cell membrane fluidity. And that's why like Gloria sends me these like, Gloria is always researching and finding stuff, right? So she sends me all these videos and, she's watching all these people that got millions of followers literally lying because they're omitting the role of cell membrane fluidity. So omission is a lie. There you go. That's my last word.
So that was excellent. So Gloria, if you're listening, you need to go into all the chat boxes on everybody's million followers on YouTube and TikTok and everywhere and be like, stop lying to people. Stop lying. Let's tell the truth here. Got to get that cell membrane fluidity. Love it.
Oh
That's
my
great,
gosh.
Robert.
Awesome information.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Good.
Again, we
deal.
appreciate everybody being
Yeah.
here. Same place, same time next week
Yes.
with another exciting topic.
Mhm.
Again, thank you to everybody. Renee, Lisa, any last thoughts?
No. Thank you so
Well,
much again, Robert. Thank you
And
again.
give me those meds. I want to see the meds. I want to know the meds that your son was taking, Lisa. I want
Okay.
to know the proper name of the meds that you have taken, Alyssa. And then next week we'll pick back up and we'll like go down a pathway and show people how the meds work.
Okay. Yeah, definitely.
Awesome.
Thank
Okay.
you. Have a great night, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you for joining.
Thank you, everybody. Woo. There you go.
Bye.
Alyssa.